Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. This is season 6 on growth, and we have a special guest with us today, Dr. Todd Petersen. But first, a word from our sponsor. The SprintRay Pro 3D printing ecosystem gives you the tools to manufacture all kinds of treatment appliances right in your office. You can use it to make clear aligners, occlusal guards, full arch surgical guides, dentures, and much, much more without the long wait times and fees of traditional labs. Having in-office manufacturing for so many different applications gives clinicians full control of their workflow. You can deliver surgical guides and occlusal guards next day or same day if you need to, or create replacements for lost or broken retainers and night guards on the spot. SprintRay puts the clinician in full control of the digital workflow, enabling dental offices to provide a better patient experience with tailored custom treatments that are affordable and fast. Because SprintRay supports open design formats, you can use any intraoral scanner and dental CAD software. If you want the flexibility of in-office manufacturing without learning design, you can partner with a digital lab for rapid turnaround times. The SprintRay 3D printing ecosystem gives you tools to take control of your digital workflow. SprintRay has done something pretty awesome for Shared Practices listeners. If you go to sprintray.com/SP, they've put together a bundle where if you order the SprintRay Pro, which is the printer that I have and use now, you'll get 2 free bottles of resin that go with that. So once again, go to sprintray.com/SP. Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We didn't know that we had so many mutual connections that we have to shout out Merkley, who is a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Chris Merkley. Was featured very early in Shared Practices. His kidney stones made it on the podcast. Those came up when he was suffering, and he was almost my co-host. But he has his priorities straight, and so he didn't commit himself to an extra podcast on top of residency. But so Todd, tell us about yourself. We have some commonalities here, including our graduation year.
Yeah. So I graduated University of Oklahoma back in 2015. I grew up in Oklahoma. That's kind of where all my family, or my immediate family is. South Central, it's a place called Ardmore is kind of where I grew up. Okay. And then my parents moved down to Duncan, Oklahoma, which is by kind of the southwest part of the state, Fort Sill.
I just came from Fort Sill.
Okay, yeah. So my parents live about 20 minutes from there. So so Lawton is kind of the hub for that area, but lived in a little town. But yeah, so we moved to Duncan my senior year, but I've spent most of my childhood there in kind of the south part of Oklahoma. Did my training there, and then moved to Northeast Nevada literally like 2 days after I graduated to start construction on a practice. Went to that area because so my parents actually went to high school kind of in that area, high school sweethearts, moved to Texas and then ended up in Oklahoma. So I'd been going to the area since I was, a little kid. That's where all of my mom's family are. So went there was a huge need. And went in, started construction, Monday after graduation. And yeah.
This is amazing because, we've had a number of people who've done acquisitions straight out of school, which we don't necessarily recommend. That's not for everyone. To do a startup straight out of school, what was going through your head and what Kool-Aid were you drinking at the time? I'm assuming the Dental Town, Scott Luna,
for sure. It actually started with my brother-in-law. So he's a dentist. He started a practice probably back in 2000, probably would have been about 2009. So I was still an undergrad getting ready to apply for dental school. I applied in 2010, started in 2011. So, but during that time frame, I was working on as like a sterile tech in the practice while I was doing undergrad. And, so he started the practice. I, was involved from a distance, just, kind of,
bystander there.
Watching him do that. And that's kind of whenever I realized, hey, like this whole process is really interesting. It's cool. He found a great area. They grew really, really quickly. So I was kind of even before I found out about Dental Town and other successful startups, I was already intrigued with that idea of starting a practice.
Cool.
And interestingly enough, before I ever even got my acceptance letter to dental school, I had already identified the community that I wanted to go into
Hmm.
and start a practice because I had family there. And as time went on, I stumbled upon Dental Town and the Scott Lunas and all the other successful people that shared their story on Dental Town. And I spent pretty much the first 2 years of dental school putting together my business plan, or if you will, of
Wow.
how I wanted to go out there and start a practice. And when it came down to it, the area that I was looking at, super rural, not a lot of commercial development. I had jokingly made a comment while I was out there visiting family one day that there was a dance studio that was right next to this grocery store. And I jokingly said, that dance studio just needs to go out of business because that'd be a perfect place for a dental office. Well, then fast forward, 2.5 years, and they had outgrown the space and had built a huge building just right around the corner, and it
Okay,
was
good.
up for lease
I'm glad that
literally in the
they did,
same time frame that I needed to find a spot. So
I'm glad they didn't go under, because it's like, don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby,
I
of
know,
like
right? Yeah.
you like cursed this dance studio to fail. I'm glad they
Yeah.
out seeded the space.
Yeah. So I mean, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment at the time, but the people that owned it were also the developers of the property.
Oh,
So they built a new building, but I was able to kind of make a connection with them, and they were super helpful when it came. They were the ones that actually built out the space for me. I had some owner financing because I had to get really creative doing this right out of school. So really the stars just aligned and it was meant to be. I don't necessarily think it was anything I did, nothing that I give myself credit for, other than the fact that I just wouldn't take no for an answer.
well, and you were probably doing your due diligence all along the way, and it turns out that like this was a good demographic and a good
Oh,
opportunity.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so maybe you would have pivoted, and maybe you wouldn't have. Maybe you would have said, "Screw it! I don't care if everything is against me. I'm still going to do it." But you, I feel like half the battle in dentistry is deciding what you want and going for it,
Yeah.
um, and
And
then having the courage to do it.
and having that never say quit mentality, because I can't tell you how many times people told me no. I
Mm.
mean, there was lots of, I even, and this is how naive I was. Actually, I'll just say not even naive. It was stupid. I mean, I literally didn't even know if I was going to get funded or not the week I graduated, but yet I was all set up to move. I was getting ready to sign the lease and start construction. But I didn't even have confirmation that I was going to have money to even do it. And so it was definitely kind of a stupid move on my part, but it worked out. And I think a lot of that was because I had done my homework and I had done my due diligence. And luck favors the people that plan, and that's just I think that was kind of my saving grace.
Well, so let's hear some more details about this specific opportunity. So, how big was the space? What were the demographics? How big was the town? Tell us, give us
Yeah,
some
so
context.
so the town itself was 15,000, and it's kind of a sister community to another town of about 20. In the town next to it, which is the county seat, plenty of dentists, not necessarily a need, but in Spring Creek, which was where I was looking, there was one dental office, about 15,000 people. Median household income, I think at the time, was between like 80 and 90,000. So
Wow.
favorable demographics,
Yeah.
um, good employment opportunities. Most of the major employers have great insurance, and so even at that time, being fresh out of school, I knew it was going to be a good opportunity. I just didn't know how long it would take to really get it up off the ground. So I started construction. Probably would have been May 15th ish, somewhere around middle of the month of May, and then opened the 21st of October back in 2015. So we had permitting issues. I mean, anything that could go wrong with the construction process went wrong, even with all of the homework and planning that we had done. So it was a bit to get things up off the ground. But I was committed I didn't have any options. It had to be successful. I didn't have two nickels to rub together at the time. And I had already invested all my time and energy into that. And so it was just kind of like, I'm gonna go until somebody puts a bullet in me and doesn't, I can't go
Yeah,
anymore. So, but yeah, so favorable demographics, great location right next to a grocery store, and then there's like Anytime Fitness, Subway, a little coffee shop,
sure.
so it was a good little hub for us to be in, especially since the town it's actually not even a town, it's a housing association. There's kind of two developments. There was the original development, which was where the other dental practice was, but then the bulk of the growth for the past 20 years has kind of been in a completely different section,
Mm,
about probably 6 or 7 miles away. And so we were physically separated from the only other practice in the town and in the hub of where the highest density of housing was. And um, we opened the end of the month, October, and I think I saw like 15 new patients the first day. And it never really slowed down. I mean, we were
15
seeing
first day.
the
Wow.
first day, yeah. And here I am. I'm more worried about paying the bills than really, trying to figure out how the workflow should be. So I've got 3 chairs open. They're full all day. I'm doing same day treatment. I'm seeing new patients. And but we literally had gotten our certificate of occupancy just a day or two before and got the equipment installed. My staff, we didn't know how to take x-rays. We didn't know where they were I mean, like, there were so many things that were
A
I
train
don't know
wreck.
if I can say this, but I mean, it was a show. But so I did a lot of things right, but there were some things I would definitely do different going back. Just from workflow and systems, and it was great because we were so busy, but it brought on a different set of challenges just because we were growing so fast, and we didn't even have systems really to begin with.
Right.
Um, and so it kind of, the first 6 months, it was super busy, but not necessarily profitable because we were behind the growth curve. I was having to hire people left and right just to, have the ability to take care of all the people that wanted to get in there. And of course, I'm right out of school, so I'm not super efficient clinically. I'm not a great diagnoser. I'm not a great communicator. There's a lot of things that I had stacked against me, but because of the new patient flow, it forced us to, go through and tweak everything. And I think if there was one thing that I did well in it, it was looking at statistics, if you will, looking at the key practice indicators and making adjustments.
Mm,
My my receptionist, who's been with me since day one, came up to me probably about 2 years into it. She was like, "I found a quote that I think that you would really like." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me." And she says, "I read this and I thought about working here. And the quote is, 'Blessed are those who are flexible, for they will not be bent out of shape.'" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, if you're going to work here, you gotta be willing to change and be willing to change kind of on the fly." We went from, I think I started with 3 staff, and within 12 months we were pushing 20. So we had, everybody, the position they started in turned into 4 positions by the time, the first year rolled around. So I felt like I was constantly going back to the drawing board and said, okay, well, treatment coordinator, we don't have enough manpower to do this specific task, so we're going to outsource it. We're going to hire another person and have them take care of, X, Y, or Z. So it was a constant, um, it was constantly going back to the drawing board and revamping everything. And I think that was, at the time, it was super stressful, really, really hard to manage. But looking back now, I think, gosh, I literally have been in almost every position of every office across the country. I've been a small single doctor, couple employee, practice. I've been the multi-doctor, multiple associates, huge staff, and everything in between,
Mm.
just having gone through all those different phases. And so it gave me a unique perspective that a lot of people don't ever get to have, being you know, I've had times where it's been, you know, oh gosh, what am I trying to say? The been by myself, not had all the support that I've needed. I've been in the opposite where I've had too many people around and have had to thin things out. I've been in
Right.
that funky stage of, you know, more than what one doctor can handle, but not necessarily enough for two, and had to figure out how to make that work. And then, and everything in between. And so, and then even personally, I went from working lots and lots of hours to, cutting down to where I am now at, 2 days a week, essentially. Um, and trying to figure out how to continually be productive, how to continually be profitable, and really using, those key practice indicators to make those decisions. And, fortunately, a lot of things have just worked out, which has been, I feel lucky.
That's awesome. So I want to go back though. I want to know, how big was the space? How many
Oh, the
operatory?
space. Yeah. Yeah. So it's 2,500 square feet, or 2,550.
Okay.
Um, and 8 ops, everything was all built out in one phase. I started with 3. And people thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy, I mean, but it was one of those situations where I was going to forfeit a great location if I wasn't willing to take the space,
Mhm.
So then I'm like, okay, well, we'll build it out and eventually we'll grow into it. I mean, I honestly thought I was going to stay there my whole career, 20, 25 years in the same location. With by probably 18 months in, we had all 8 treatment rooms up and running and pretty much at capacity. So then we had to go back and revamp our schedule to open up more chair time. So it was kind of a gutsy move, but ultimately I wish I would have had more space.
Right.
So
In retrospect, yeah. So, that's incredible. Do you remember what you collected your first year?
yeah, so in the first 12 months we collected just shy of 1.5 million.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Just 0 to
And yeah, so I mean, whenever I say it was busy, I think so November, so opened up the end of October. It was like 21st, I think. November, I think I did 89,000, and in December I did over 100,000. So by month, the first, second, or the full second month, I'd already done over 100 grand a month. And it was, I mean, it was extremely, extremely tough because I mean, I don't even know what I'm doing,
right.
and
New
trying to
grad.
keep up with that patient flow and whatnot. So, um, anyhow, it was really busy, really quick. And I just kind of had that mentality of, I'm drinking out of a fire hydrant, and I'm just going to guzzle down as much as I can. And so, but I remember thinking about 6 months in, the wheels are going to fall off at some point. At some point, this new patient flow isn't going to, this can't continue to go this way. And then at month 9, I'm like, okay, it's not just going that way. It keeps getting busier and busier. And that's whenever I think it was probably about month 9 that I hired my first associate. And yeah, it just amplified the problems that already existed. And so once again, it was back to the drawing board, trying to figure out how to do the multi-doctor single location style. And it was there was a huge learning curve there. um, yeah, so it was definitely a rodeo.
So, originally I was thinking, okay, we're gonna talk about how did you grow this. So the first answer is you were an amazing spot with an amazing demographic.
Yeah.
Um, did you like spend any money on marketing at all, or was this
Oh,
just
for
like
sure, for sure.
organic?
Yeah. So I did a couple rounds of direct mail, website. Um, I think the thing that got at least the most views was I started a Facebook page, and I was documenting our construction process all along the way. And I think before we opened, we had over 200, 200 likes and followers. And, these are people, this is a business that hasn't even opened, at that time. And so that got a lot of people interested. Obviously, it being a high traffic area, people were excited that a new business was coming into Spring Creek. So, I do feel like that both kind of that grassroots marketing, and then we obviously did some external marketing, but that the combination of the two really is what catapulted us and got that high new patient flow.
Started. Yeah, that's awesome. So then you've got the flip side of now you've built this fire hydrant of patients and we have to keep up with it. Was hiring difficult, like team members in that community?
Super hard because you're not looking at an area where there's lots of qualified people. I think,
Experience
I mean,
the
even
dental
even
team, 'cause
still,
there's one
yeah, I mean,
dental
yeah, there's not, and even in the other town, there's not that many offices. The dental community is really small. So hygienists were hard to recruit, dentists were hard to recruit. Probably, I would say 80% of the people that I hired that weren't hygienists or dentists, I hired from other industries and trained them. So that had its own set of challenges. I really had to have my systems dialed in because I was taking somebody who didn't even know, tooth numbers and trying to teach them how to be a dental assistant. And so, over time, developed kind of a training program, office procedures and protocols, and now I feel like, um, I could take anybody who's willing to learn and put them into that system, and they can function at a high level within 90 days. And um, so yeah, that was a really big challenge that we had to overcome, was finding even staff to support the growth that we were having.
So, what advice do you have for someone who is facing a similar situation where they're having to hire non-dental people to fulfill, front desk assistant roles? I mean, I don't know what the assistant
Yeah.
certification was in Nevada, if they could learn on the job or if they had to go to a school or something. How did you overcome that, and what lessons did you learn, both painfully and by doing it the right way?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that nobody knows better than you do, right? Or that's how it should be. So if you don't know how to, do insurance, how do you expect, somebody else to be able to do it? And so, I mean, I've spent probably hundreds of hours writing procedures and protocols of how we do things, and then reevaluating them and going back, and so, and tweaking things as we grew. Um, it's I think the biggest thing would be know your business and all the ins and outs, and there's nobody better to train those people than you. Um, I train all the newbie assistants. I take them and I, get them trained up. They spend at least 90 days with me before they start working with another doctor. Um, I even set up our clinical flow. Um, all except for one associate was right out of school that I hired. So I would train them to do work exactly like I do, so that it wouldn't be confusing to the newbie assistant who has, no experience whatsoever. And I knew if they could keep up with me, they could probably keep up with, pretty much anybody. And so, I really took that training portion seriously, just because I knew that if it was going to continue to function how I wanted it to, whether I was there or not, I needed to be the one to teach them how it should be done.
Mm.
And that was both front office and clinically. Um, I would say half of our hygienists were, actually all except for one of the current hygienists, was right out of school or less than like a being out, within a year of being out. So, but I think it did provide a unique opportunity for us, in the sense is that we got to groom those people to be exactly what we wanted them to be and to fit into our system. Um, and I don't know if that was a blessing or a curse for them, because they kind of got thrown into a model that isn't the most learning friendly environment. But for us, it really worked good once we had that system in place to be able to take somebody off the street who we felt like was a good fit from a culture standpoint, plug them into our system and have them be successful.
That's awesome. And that's amazing when you can get that down to the point that you can trust that system.
Yeah.
Um, and
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 it takes a long time, and it takes reps. And that's the problem is that not necessarily the problem, but when you're in a busy practice like that, in a high growth practice, you get a lot of reps. You get to hire a lot of people. You get to fire a lot of people. Most people, especially if they're going into an established practice, don't get those experiences or don't get them regularly enough to be able to, um, to be able to find those trends or see how things work out when done different ways. And so, it was a blessing and a curse. It was probably one of the most challenging parts. But now that experience, I feel like is invaluable.
do you for and I think you're absolutely right with the fact that people don't get reps both hiring and firing and training new people, and so therefore the whole process of firing someone and finding someone feels super intimidating, and so
Yeah.
maybe they hang on to people way longer than they should, unfortunately.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
with hiring in particular, has there been anything, when you don't have dental references to ask, and they don't have dental experience to cite, what have been some of your useful filtering criteria for
Yeah.
hiring non-dental folks?
So we have an interview process, and um, it's nothing special. I think more than anything, I like sitting down with them individually and just trying to get a feel for their personalities. What's their work ethic? What's their ability to learn? So there's no magic sauce when it comes to for me, I don't feel like there's been a magic sauce that's come from that process. But if I feel like they could potentially be a good fit, I have them come do a working interview and, have them see what it's like to run around with a bunch of different providers, working eight treatment rooms, seeing 60 patients a day, as a practice. If it's in the front, I have them sit there and do that, and I have my girls that are in charge of training, they work with them, so they get to see um, what the workflow is. And I think, especially coming from other industries, maybe outside of like the food industry, most people haven't had jobs that are that busy. A lot of them are, they're answering phones for the school, or they're a bank teller, or whatever. And so it's a very drastic change from having that type of a work day to coming into an office like ours and running around like a chicken with your head cut off all day. So, those have been kind of the two biggest things. We do run background checks. We have them do a personality survey. But a lot of it comes down to I have an office manager, um, two lead assistants, a front office coordinator, and they've been with me for long periods of time. So they know how I think and how I function. And they kind of help weed out the people that might not be a good fit for the practice. And then heaven forbid somebody does slip through the cracks and we, hire them and they aren't a good fit. They also kind of take care of the backside of that if it's not. So um, I have definitely made mistakes when it comes to that hiring process. I could spend a whole podcast talking about all the things that I should have done better when it comes to the hiring and firing and training. But where we're at now is very different than where we were at, even 2 years ago. Before, we would have a hard time getting applicants. Now we've got a stack of resumes. People want to come work at our practice. I think we were the only practice in the whole area that didn't lay people off during COVID. We didn't cut people's hours. We made it work, and I think, especially since then, any dental dental staff has been interested or applied at our practice, just because it's, it's good practice to work at.
So you're now at the point where the culture of your office is attracting other
Absolutely.
dental potential applicants and just random people
Yeah.
that come in your practice and say, "Hey, I kind of want to work here."
Yeah.
You
I
hiring?
remember I think I had 100 resumes before I ever even opened. And not to be rude, but 99% of them were crap. Now we now have a pool of people, if there is an opening, that we can go to and say, hey, 6 months you came in and dropped off a resume, you still interested in working here? If so, this is what it would look like. We, not that we hardball people, but we tell them, if you're going to make the transition here, you've got to fit into our system. You can't come here thinking it's going to be exactly like it was at whatever office you were working at. You need to have an expectation of how this is going to proceed. And people respect that. I think that, knowing what they're getting into beforehand, it either makes them even that much more excited, or it squashes the deal right there, which is a blessing too.
Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. And you've learned a lot of these lessons. You've refined your system over time. You now have a team in place that is doing all of this. Tell us about some of your kind of midterm growth. So you went your first year, you're breaking 1.5 million.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened from
The next year, I think we collected like 2.2. So that would have been, so 2016 was about 1.5, 2017 was 2.2, 2018 was just shy of 3 million, 2019 was just shy of 3 million. And then this year we will break 3 million. We'll probably be about 3.1, but that's with almost 10 weeks of being, limited only, essentially, emergency dental care only. So this year probably would have been, 3.5, 3.6, had we been able to kind of keep doing business as normal. Um, and not to tangent, but 2018, 2019, those years I was going through some personal stuff. I got divorced during that time frame. I was commuting back and forth between two states, so I would see patients, Monday, Tuesday, half a day, Wednesday, go get on an airplane Wednesday afternoon, pick up my kids Wednesday night, have them until the next Wednesday, fly home, get in at 10 or 11 o'clock, go back to work Thursday, Friday. So I personally was stretched really, really thin, and kind of got out of that growth mindset.
Mm.
Kind of shifted more into a coast type of mindset, but we continued to grow and I continued to cut back. So I think the take home for me, or I guess looking back now, is setting those systems and expectations within the practice up early is what really gave me that flexibility to be able to both be a dentist and a practice owner, and also be very active as a dad. And kind of reaffirmed the things that we did right. Because under other circumstances, I wouldn't have been able to either take that much time, or it would have imploded whenever I wasn't there. And that was my goal from the very beginning, was to make, and obviously my situation changed, but I always wanted to create a multi-doctor practice where there was a good balance of lifestyle and income.
Mm.
And fortunately I made that decision early, and the groundwork was kind of already laid to where, when that was really my only option, I would have either had to chose to, stay in the practice or be a dad. Those two were able to kind of coexist, even though, the circumstances were a little bit challenging.
That's incredible. You've shown what's possible, and you know George is kind of doing this stepping away, and he's less and less
Yeah.
clinical. He's almost disappeared clinically. Um, how how much do you want to be a dentist for the rest of your life versus practice owner? That can be a fluctuating question. This is, we're
No,
not.
and I think, if things were different, I I love taking care of patients and I love teeth. And, not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty good at it. I just have realized, as things have changed. I've since remarried. I've got 3 kids and 2 stepkids. So we've got 5 kids between the two of us. We're busy and we're always running around. And what I realized, about a year ago is that my schedule and that flexibility was great. But whenever I was gone, I was gone. I was in a completely other state,
Right.
so I wasn't able to make, all of the sporting events or the piano recitals or the dance recitals or whatever. And that has become even more important to me now. And so it's not that I don't want to be a dentist. Um, I just, family's important and that's where I want to focus. So ultimately the goal from here on out is to, create practices where my involvement in taking care of patients is really as much or as little as I want it to be. And we've been kind of toying with some different models that would enable that. And so, I'd like to. I've been working about 8 days a month for the last almost 2.5 years. For me, that's sustainable. I enjoy it still, and especially not having to catch planes and fly out of state and maintain 2 residences and all the
Sure.
fun stuff that goes with that. I think that'll take a load off of my plate. But I'd like to continue to do dentistry, just not full time.
So with this practice, are you still at that practice or have you
Yep.
transitioned or
Yeah. Yeah. So we were we were actually supposed to close on the 15th of March and we got shut down from COVID on the 13th. So that pushed our purchase date back until about mid-June, or first couple weeks of June. But my contract is through the end of the year.
okay,
And really I've been there kind of helping finish off any big cases. I do ortho, so trying to get those ortho patients transferred over to other providers or getting them finished up. But I think I've got 6 days left for the year, so I'm
holy cow.
pretty excited to kind of be wrapping that up. It's bittersweet. Um, it's I think it's kind of hit me in the face probably over the last month or so, just as patients, are coming in that I've been taking care of for the last 5 years. They they're sad to see me go, but they're not going to leave the practice. And I think that was my biggest fear is that I felt like I was having to choose patients or kids, but with having the great doctors that, I've been able to get some just awesome guys out there with me. And patients are still going to be well taken care of. Maybe better in some instances,
Yeah,
just without me having to, my availability is pretty limited. And so, but yeah, it kind of hit me in the face over the last month, and it's been, walking away from your creation and doing that. It's been something I would do again, but it doesn't necessarily make it easy to swallow sometimes.
sure. No, well, it's been pretty incredible how much you've done in such a short period of time and the practice you've built. Um, so I was thinking we were gonna save this for a second episode, but I actually think we're gonna talk about this right now and probably wrap it up for today. Um, what are some models you've toyed with in the future, and why do you like startups versus an acquisition?
Yeah. So, and I'll answer that question first. For me, a startup done right creates so much more equity. I think my initial investment was maybe around 400,000. And whenever I sold, that had multiplied, my equity was, more than 5 times my initial investment.
Right.
So you can really create wealth and equity if done right.
Mm,
Um, and so, for me to go purchase a practice similar to what was in Nevada, I that would be a hefty loan. And not to say that it can't work or can't cash flow, but um, having gone through the process already once and learned the lessons that I have, I still feel like startups, at least for my personal situation, are the best route for me to go. But I'm also the kind that, I'm a glutton for punishment. I like,
At this point, you know what you've signed yourself up for to
yeah,
do
yeah.
this again. Last time you had no clue.
Last time I had no clue. Absolutely not. And I remember, I remember telling myself, about 8 weeks in, okay, if I can just make it, to the beginning of the year, I'll have stuff figured out. And then it was, okay, if I can just get through the next couple of months, and I'll have a new associate and things will get easier. And then, oh, if I can just, and I always found myself saying, I'll get my head above water, in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And finally, I just kind of quit telling myself that and started picking up a pencil and a notepad and taking down notes from all the things that I, had kind of screwed up along the ways. And so, but it's hard. It's probably the hardest thing. A startup is probably the path of most resistance that anybody could take within our industry, especially being an absentee owner startup. I mean, that's pretty tough way to go. But for my personal goals, and even the goals that my wife and I have, are to be able to maintain the existing lifestyle that we have and continue to have that flexibility of being spending time with our kids.
Okay, cool. Well, do you mind talking about what kind of startups are exciting to you from this point
Yeah,
on? Or
yeah,
you want to keep
yeah.
that under
So
the belt and
no, no, no. I'm happy to share. I'm in a very competitive metro area now. That's where I currently reside, and so I've toyed around with the option of doing emergency clinics where it's small spaces, 3 chairs, no hygiene, toothaches,
extended
you know,
hours.
extended hours, super low overhead, super profitable. Even taking that a step further and not just marketing to the general public, but being basically an emergency referodontist, for other practices, saying, hey, when that patient calls after hours and has a toothache, send them our way, and we'll send them back, so kind of being a emergency specialist, if you will,
Huh.
in the area, the things that, the allure of that model to me is, um, smaller spaces, smaller staff, low overhead, um, procedures that predominantly are high, have a higher percentage reimbursement from insurance companies.
Sure.
Your endo at 80%, your surgery at 80%, or whatever it is, minimizing out of pocket costs, no continued care.
Yeah.
I mean, so that to me I think there's some pros there. Some of the cons is, with getting extended hours, staffing is always an issue when you have extended hours like that. Um, Finding associates that have the skill set to be able to do those emergency procedures, whether that be trauma or toothaches or abscess or whatever it may be. Not every dentist is comfortable in that scenario. So so that's one model I've toyed with. The other is, I speak Spanish. Um, have always had, kind of a love for the Hispanic people, and the other business model that we've kind of kicked around is creating practices that cater specifically to the Hispanic population, where from the time they call to the end of their visit, everything, all of our staff are bilingual. Everything's done in Spanish, marketed in Spanish. And it would be, there would be some similarities to those emergency clinics where same day, lots of same day treatment, taking care of kind of a fixodontist, and maybe instead of being more preventive like in the other model that I've had, but really a population that I feel like is generally underserved,
Sure.
and a very grateful population. Like I said, there's even within the practice in Nevada, we're probably 15 to 20% Hispanic, And it all started with maybe one or two families. They refer all their, friends and family. They're coming from long distances to come see us just
Oh, wow.
because there's a provider that speaks Spanish, not just auxiliary staff. And so that would be the goal, would be to find both providers and staff that are bilingual, and really just cater to that population. I think there's a huge need for it. And for me, it kind of serves a greater cause. I living in Peru developed just a love for that population, and it's unfortunately a population that generally gets overlooked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did my mission trip in East LA for 2 years, Spanish speaking. And so, got a combination of every possible different Central and South American country.
Ethnicity, yeah, oh for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and all of the food from all of those different countries. So I shared the same love. And however, I will say my dental Spanish is awful.
Yeah.
I haven't done much dentistry in Spanish, so
Well,
I would need to
what's
like.
interesting is kind of the root of that model came from while I was in dental school, and because I spoke Spanish, um, my patient pool, if you will, typically spoke Spanish. So I spent pretty much all of dental school taking care of the Hispanic population, and whereas other students were struggling to get enough units of Crown and Bridge or Endo or whatever. I mean, I think I did 60 units of Crown and Bridge,
Holy cow.
and before I ever even got done with dental school, and then same with all the other requirements, if you will. And I felt a lot of it was because of the trust that my patient pool had in me, not because of what I was saying, but because I was able to communicate that in a way that they understood. And I'll never forget, you know, me telling somebody, hey, this is what needs to be done, and they pull out a wad of $100 bills and just pay for it, not because they just had that money laying around, but because they felt like it was important because of the relationship that we had. And I think a lot gets lost in translation, as I'm sure but the trust that they put in me as a provider really showed by the amount of work that they allowed me to do while I was doing that. And that's been the trend, since day one. And I saw it in the practice and in Nevada as well. So
That's
it's
awesome.
something that, if you can't tell, I'm kind of passionate about. Really, right now, just want it's something that I want to be able to do that's scalable. So really, right now, just kind of vetting all the different models, and finding not just what's going to be the best financial reward for each of those, but also kind of that, I think I'm at a point in my career where I want something more than just a good income. I want to feel like I'm.
So, hey, sorry about that. Dr. Petersen, Todd's audio cut out, and now we're using his laptop microphone. So it's going to sound a little different here. But Todd, thank you for sharing your journey and for all the growth and experience that you bring to the table, and for where you're going. This is exciting, and we're excited to hear what's to come.
Yeah, no, and it's exciting for me. I have always been the beneficiary of people who are willing to share their experiences and their path. And for me, this is a way to kind of give back and share those experiences with others. And hopefully, there's another excited dental student listening that that might follow the same path that I took. And even one person kind of making that you know following some of these lessons. I mean, that's worth it to me. But no, I'm excited too. Lots coming down the pike, and as things continue to develop, I'd love to come back on and kind of share what I'm up to.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's been another episode of the Shared Practices podcast, season 6. Thank you, Todd. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks for having me.